And I think we're on.
Isn't Karen usually here by now?
Yeah, but
There's
we'll have the video for her.
Okay,
So.
great, okay.
All right.
So my name's Cathy Cramer, both C's if you're if you're curious, and I am recently retired professor from Dartmouth,
What were you a professor of?
neuroscience.
What's it?
Neuroscience.
Oh, wow.
Psychology. And
I'm impressed.
But from and that's all I'll say about that.
Okay.
I love retirement. It's great, as many of you probably already know. But I've been knitting since I was 7, and so I mean I'm pretty established in my patterns. I taught myself to crochet in my late teens, early 20s. I tend to teach myself things. That's kind of what I do. I didn't learn to make socks until maybe 10 or 11 years ago. You know, a bit the usual things, the scarves, hats, sweaters, blah. But I want to tell you this story because I want to give people who don't want to do this permission to not do it. Which is, I took a class because I thought, yeah, people love knitting socks, I should learn to knit socks. I took a class, I dutifully followed along, I made myself a pair of socks. I did not bring them because I didn't think about it and wore them day before yesterday and they're in the laundry. You didn't want stinky socks. But that first pair of socks is full of errors and I hated making them. I'm just going to say that. I said, I don't know why people like this. And then I realized part of it was because they started with socks that were too complex. You know, they had internal patterns. Am I in the way?
You're good.
Okay,
You're perfect.
Sorry. And it was on really fine yarn and really small needles, and it was just overwhelming. It took me 3 months to make this pair, and I'm a fast knitter. I mean, I can make a hat in 2 days easy. And I said, okay, I'm missing something here. So what I did was I went back and I took the various steps. I broke it down and I taught myself to do them using big worsted weight, just scrap worsted weight yarn and bigger needles, and then it became much easier. And once I had those skills down, then I went back to sock yarn and a more typical thing. So that's how I'm going to teach this class because it was so useful to me. And once I kind of done that, then I went back and I made a pair of socks, and that was much more fun. They weren't perfect, but they were a lot better. And I said, and by the third one, I was hooked. And now ever since then, I don't know how many socks I've made. I only wear handmade socks.
Oh.
I don't wear socks in the summer.
Did you make those?
Yes.
Aren't they beautiful?
Again, these are really, I didn't even notice.
Wow.
I wear them based on what I'm
Yeah, you're
color.
so coordinated.
Yeah, I make socks that fit my wardrobe.
Yeah.
Yes,
they're
of
very
course.
Yeah.
And those are
They're beautiful.
Those were pretty simple. And I'm going to show you a bunch of socks I've made. I've adjusted my styles over the year. As you know, because you are people who are familiar with yarn, no two socks are the same because no two skeins of yarn are the same. No two knitters are the same. So part of the deal, and let me just also say, no 2 feet are the same. So I would strongly encourage to first, so today I'm going to talk, I'm going to do techniques and talk a little bit about sock. And if any of you have sock yarn, I'm happy to, make suggestions about it. But don't feel like you need to run out and buy sock yarn the very first thing. And although it's beautiful, I'm going to say, some of us buy sock yarn just because it's like pretty. And I have a fair amount of it sitting on display in my studio. But but I would also encourage you to make socks for yourself. And the reason for that is twofold. One is, at least your first sock pair or two. One is because you can measure your own feet. They are attached to your leg, and that is very handy. And you can also try things on. And when things go wrong, you don't have to feel guilty about it. That's another thing. The other thing about socks is because you do it with very fine yarn, you're using very small needles, and that is intimidating. If you have arthritis in your hands, this may not be the thing for you. But there are ways around it. I had to have corneal transplants a couple of years ago, and before that,
Bilateral?
Huh?
Bilateral?
Both of them, yeah. I have an inherited condition from my mother, so I knew it was coming. And for a couple of years, I couldn't see very well, and I couldn't drive and things like that while I was waiting for the transplants. And it was hard for me to do socks then. So if you have vision issues, your light's not very good, maybe not socks. But that said, I love wearing hand knit socks. That's all I wear because they're more comfortable. I can make them fit my feet, which we all have different shaped feet, and you can adjust them for that. They are extremely popular for gifts. Both my husbands and sons, they don't. I wouldn't say demand, but strongly encourage at least one pair of socks at every holiday. So at this point in my life, I probably make 6 or 8 pairs of socks a year, and it's not a big challenge because I've done it a lot. But it is challenging to learn. So let me talk. So what I did is I brought a few socks just to kind of show you what kind of things are. You see the pair I'm wearing. I think I'm going to start with these because I just mentioned my husband and son. So one year,
Those are handsome.
aren't those
Wow.
good looking? These are my version. They actually are 4 different skeins of yarn from each of the 4 recipients. So, this is the bottom, actually, I'll start at the top. This was my older son, my younger son, my husband, and my older son's partner.
Okay.
If you look real close, you can see that the skeins are different. And I had enough leftovers that I made myself a pair.
Good for you.
So it's my little memory of
That's cool.
my
They're
sweet,
beautiful.
my sweet
And
young.
gorgeous.
But what made each of these patterns, it's in the yarn. I didn't have to do. There is
okay.
no.
Oh, wow.
See, so that's why I kind of want to pick these up. So you can do this kind of fun stuff that's beautiful, just because how the yarn is dyed. So, and where did I drop?
How do you know when it's going to change?
You
The
don't.
pattern.
The first time, well, on this one I knew because I'd already made a pair of
Okay.
socks on each of them. So one of the fun things about using this kind of yarn, and let me just show you, someday I'm gonna. So this is a different color of that same yarn.
Okay.
Pretty.
When I'm looking at it like this, you're exactly right. I have no idea what the
Yeah.
color pattern is going to be. That's half the fun.
So would you make a sweater out of that?
It's real fine.
Yeah,
This
but
is fingering. Well.
and then you'd be like, well, I don't know where it's going to change now.
Yeah, I would never make. This is meant to be sock yarn,
Okay.
and so I would probably not make. I might make a shawl out of it, but I sure wouldn't make a sweater. Correct, because you don't know when it's going to change.
Yeah.
I mean, it is predictable. After a certain point,
Yeah.
it is predictable. So, I do pay attention when I'm making a sock to that predictability. And if I want to match them, and in this case, I did match them. So I started them but I had a lot of leftovers. If you don't have, yeah.
Yeah.
But I also wanted the socks to all match. And these are pretty heavy socks. I mean, these are boot sock because
Okay.
this is pretty heavy yarn. So
Are they wool?
they are. I think they're 75, 25. Yeah. So most sock yarn is 75% wool and 25% hide. You can find other fibers and things. I may have made 1 pair of socks with cotton. Never again.
Yeah.
They were uncomfortable. But I think you can get sock yarn that is in 100% wool. You almost, again, socks, right? They're going on your feet. You gotta wash them. If you're using really, really fine wool, you're gonna have to hand wash them. I am not giving men, my grown sons, lovely though they may be, they're gonna throw them in the washing machine. Probably gonna throw them in the dryer. you want to be sensitive to that. And so, you know, I mean, if you get really fine yarn, you're going to spend a small fortune. I did bring an example. This is kind of shockingly expensive yarn. Gail knows. I'm kind of cheap. I rarely pay full price for anything. But you know, I'll work up something that people give me. This is Lorna's Laces. You know, if you went out and bought this, probably $35 a skein that would make a pair of socks.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're gonna hand wash it.
Yeah.
Even though it's superwash. This says it's superwash. But part of the reason I wanted to bring these, again, I love these socks. I wear them all the time.
Darling.
Yeah.
But you can tell that they've shrunk a little. They're a little smaller, even with gentle care. And I actually never use. I never use dryer. I always hang all my clothes to dry. So,
But you wash them in the washer?
these I wash in the washer that are a blend.
Okay.
These I do not.
So you hand wash them?
These I
with
hand wash.
woolite
And
or
so you're not,
something.
with
You put
woolite,
under or
yeah.
something.
And you're, you know, I mean, yeah, if you have something special, fancy, you're not gonna do it every day. So I, you know, you go to the store, you see this beautiful stuff.
Yeah.
You probably don't want to spend $35 for it. And I actually think did I bring them? Yeah, did I bring some out? Yeah. So, I mean, this is Malabrigo. Isn't that pretty?
Yeah.
That's 100% superwash. Some of the nicer sock yarn that is out there. Retail, $40.
Really? Yeah.
Good shopper,
Good shopper,
Well-
what'd you get it for?
$12.50.
Where'd you get it?
Webb's in Northampton,
Yeah.
Mass.
Yeah.
I go down to New Haven often,
Yeah,
so I'm often going by there. And they have
they have sales.
Wow,
sale
that's
boxes.
pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is a color that will go with my wardrobe, so that's high on the list. But I'm gonna have to hand wash these.
Yeah.
So I have mixed feelings.
Even
about
though
them.
they're superwash?
Even though they're superwash. I mean, I think you could maybe turn them inside out, put them in a sweater bag, wash them in the machine, hang them to dry flat.
What do you think they call it superwash? If you're worried it's gonna shrink, right?
Yeah, because really fine yarn that you would use for socks.
Yeah, but
Is-
why do they say it's
I'm gonna get a
superwash?
sweater.
Yeah, because they've treated it. And not
Are you
all,
wearing-
that's what makes
do you mind if I
superwash is
wear
superwash
this?
because of how it's chemically treated.
Oh,
No matter what you're using it for. And some manufacturers do it differently than others, that's all I could say.
okay,
I've certainly made sweaters that shrunk and some that didn't.
okay,
So I don't, I think it's a little bit of a crapshoot.
yeah.
But I just had to show you these. Often, the other thing about a lot of expensive yarns like these is they're hand painted.
Yeah,
Hand painted yarns are gorgeous. This one's hand painted too. The only time I ever pay full price for anything, any yarn, is if I'm traveling and I see a local yarn shop and I feel like I want to support them and they have local artistic stuff. I'll suck it up and get a skein. I almost consider it charity, but that's okay. And that's when I got this. Not everybody is going to wear this color.
I love it. That's
I
beautiful.
actually have a pair of pants in the purple and a top in the white and pink. So these are perfect for me. These actually, I've been told, glow in black light.
Oh,
The
well,
dyer
you wear
put that
black
note
light
on
these
there.
days? Yeah.
I don't have a black light, so I can't verify it. But why I want to bring them is because I want to mention that one of the things with hand paints, and you may have found this in other things you make, is that they pool. So this is totally unpredictable.
Yeah.
There was no way to there was no way to match it. There's no way to it could pool. I mean, sometimes it pools, like here it's pooled a lot of purple, and here there's none. And it's totally unpredictable. And if that bothers you, hand paint. Don't do hot paint, hand paints. If you're looking for something like super funky,
Yeah.
hand paints. What do I do with hand paints? Well, yeah, it does match my hair too. Yes, I am not afraid of color. I think is what one time someone said to me. A lot of the hand paint I have, the hand painting yarns, I do have some because as I say, when I go to a local yarn shop, I try to do something. It's art for the wall.
What's the name of that yarn again?
Oh my God.
Or the
It's-
brand?
It's very local from
Okay.
a place in Baltimore. It's like, I always want to say Gryffindor, and that is wrong. What is there's a mythical animal.
A griffer. A
No,
griffin?
it's not a griffin. It's a snallygaster. That's it. It's a snallygaster.
I love it.
Yeah. You will never find it any place but in Western Maryland. So, but that's my spiel about
That's
wool
cool.
yarn. But so, I just want to. I have these in the bag because I want to talk a little bit about. So yarn weights differ. You know that already. You don't need me to tell you that. But that's true for there's kind of. And they differ even within a supposed category. But sometimes, like this is really almost a DK. And it was normally be called 6-ply. And part of the reason you can tell it's heavier is because when you look at the thing, it's 150 grams to get 390 meters. Whenever you're going to make a pair of socks, my kind of mental goal number that, oh yes, that will make a pair of socks is 400 meters.
400.
Meters or yards.
But how high are they?
Well, it depends. Yeah, that'll be a,
Not a
not a
pair.
knee sock. That'll not give you a knee sock. It'll give you a crew sock.
So 400 meters?
400 meters or yards, doesn't matter.
Okay.
It's the same. I mean, there's, as I say, there's always extra, unless you're making a sock for a man with a really big feet. I haven't met in my life with really big feet. So I don't worry about it too much. But, and I said, a heavier yarn like this is something you can do on a heavier needle. So part of the reason I brought this was because I had a little extra, so I made this gray was from another set like this, actually the same manufacturer yarn that I made for my younger son last year, that I had a little extra, so I put it on needles, because I'm going to let people mess with different size needles. I'm just going to put them over on the table and let people say, what is it like, so these are 3s. I don't know how often any of you use 3s. I don't use them often for anything other than socks, but they're the biggest sock needle
you
I would
use
ever
smaller.
use. I always go down in size from what's recommended on the
Oh.
label. So the label on this says 3 to 6, and 3 is the biggest I would ever use. Socks, again, you want them tight. What is you want the
Stitches.
the stitching tight.
Yeah.
Because you want them to be comfortable. So, and that's something you want to be sensitive to. So I'm going to put this over on the table with the sock, the practice thing, the yarn if you want to look at it, and the needles I'm using. I, by the way, love Addy Turbos.
Adding what?
Addy Turbos.
Okay.
They're like not giving them away. But every once in a while you find a shop going out of business